Well, those dramatic scenes where they show that the lawyers raving and ranting and doing things in a very dramatic manner does not even exist. Like I said, it's a dramatization of the actual reality. And frankly, the scene that they always show in court is actually the final hearing, which happens right at the end of the matter. It's a stark difference between what happens in the real courts and what happens in the movies. Apart from that, they also show that the lawyer is misbehaving with the judges. He's acting very aggressively with the witnesses, and there are times he can even be abusive. And there are instances in which they show that the lawyers actually start what you call in Hindi as hatapai, which is ridiculous. It never happens. And even Sarthak, that there are stray incidents like litigants throwing their shoes at the judges, and you know what happened after that. It's deemed to be contempt, and then they get punished. So, in Indian courts, I think still being humble, and especially the higher courts, is all about the humility and all about trying to make the judge feel extremely important and then trying to get his attention. And many times they are not even ready to hear you. So it's not very easy. But I would definitely want viewers to know that what they see in movies is not what really happens in the real court. In fact, this serial called Mamla Legal Hai is still quite close to what happens in reality, but not fully.
So, ma'am, having spent several years in the profession, what qualities or habits do you believe that distinguishes an exceptional lawyer and an average lawyer?
Well, the first word I would say is integrity. Integrity is something that always shines out, and that is what makes you stand out amongst your peer. But apart from integrity, you also have to do a lot of hard work. Unlike other professions, I think law is more demanding when it comes to hard work. And of course, you also have to have very strong communication skills, not only in word, but also in writing. And you have to have the ability to understand your case thoroughly. That's the reason why I always tell young lawyers who are working with us that first be clear on the facts. Once you're clear on the facts, then look at the law and apply the law. Don't go running and rushing in a hurry. And now with AI, everybody thinks that they can become the next Mr. Jetmalani by using AI. I'm sorry to say it's not correct. I have worked with that man and I have seen that it is nothing short of sheer hard work and dedication to the brief that made him what he was. So these are the things that lawyers must be aware of. And apart from that, lawyers must also understand that the legal profession is all about continuous learning. We have a system which is very dynamic. Every day a new case is decided in the Supreme Court and law is interpreted in a new manner. Then that new manner will continue till another interpretation is done. So these are a few things that one must always keep in mind.
So, ma'am, world is getting a lot aspiration. People want to get ahead in life, and people think of entering the legal profession. And then we hear things about that people not able to make it. So, ma'am, many young law graduates today enter the profession with high expectations, and they often struggle during the initial years, and
Mhm.
they quit very easily. So, ma'am, looking back at your own journey, what advice would you give to these young lawyers who are just beginning their legal careers?
Today, the focus is more on the salary rather than the skill set. But I always have believed, and when we began in the profession, we were not even paid a single rupee. We just had to struggle for a few years till a time came when we actually could get some salary. But you have to understand one thing, you cannot be useful if you don't have skill sets. So I always feel that first you should focus on learning the skill, learning how to become a lawyer, observing successful lawyers closely, learning how to read extensively, learning how to draft properly. You have to be patient and persistent. Money will come for all of us. Don't forget that in life we get what is already written for us. So it's not as if we will not be earning good money at some point of time. Yes, we will. But the struggle in our profession is definitely more than in other professions. And but once the growth starts, then it's geometric rather than arithmetic. And one should remember that one has to be very clear on honing your skills more than anything else.
We know, ma'am, how much presence of tech and AI has taken over our profession, and it is rapidly growing. Not just in our profession, I might just say this, but lawyers are quite late to the party. But ma'am, do you believe these developments will fundamentally change the way as how we work day to day in our profession, not just arguing, drafting, and everything? So, do you think that we should actually prepare for this change, or we're good to go already?
Every passing day, some new technology, some new invention will always be there. And it's actually very good because we should grow. I have never believed in being in one particular position and stagnating in life. So today, if we have AI, I think it's a big boon. But you must know how to use the AI. Just don't go blindly saying that, oh, there is AI and it can do my work. No. If you don't know how to use the AI, if you don't have the skill sets that is required to use the AI, how will it help you? So, technology is definitely a synonym for efficiency, and definitely things can move much faster. But you have to remember the human mind is the sharpest, and it is that human mind and intellect that will help a lawyer in the ultimate long run, and not these tools such as AI or computers or whatever may come in the near future. So, while lawyers must be technology savvy, and while lawyers must know how to use technology, but they must always remember that they have to improve their skill sets by actual reading, by actual drafting, and that's the way they'll improve in life.
So, ma'am, having witnessed the evolution before your eyes, how do you see the future of advocacy and legal practice over the next decade?
Well, to begin with, definitely technology has played a big role and everybody's benefiting out of it. Now, Indian lawyers are becoming more specialized as compared to what they used to be 40, 50 years ago, where they were only generalizing. But now you have special areas, niche areas of practice. And now, another thing that has happened is that Indian lawyers have now spread very vastly into the corporate world. So, this has become a parallel practice area apart from just going to court, and it's growing very well. In fact, it's more paying when you're a corporate lawyer as compared to when you're a lawyer in court. But of course, there has been a lot of changes. Now, see, methodology will definitely change in 40, 50 years. Like you were just reminiscing that we used to pull out each
Right.
book and go through the judgment and flag the important parts. Those things are gone now. Things are now handed over to you on a silver plate. But that does not
Right,
mean
ma'am.
that that makes you a sharp lawyer. No, you still need to read. After all, lawyers are all about interpreting the law, right? So if your understanding is
Exactly.
not correct, how will you interpret the law? So in that
In
sense, I
fa-
would say, though there are changes, not all changes are very good. Lawyers should still focus on developing their skill sets, which is communication skills, reading skills, drafting skills, and of course, ultimately, how to present a case before a
right. So, my next question would be, ma'am, let's say there's an ordinary citizen. He's facing some legal problem for the very first time. People might not know what's the procedure. As lawyers, we know, but people might get see themselves stuck. Whether it's a property dispute, a family dispute, financial, criminal complaint, for whatever it is. So, as lawyers, what would be your advice to them that what should be their first steps that should be taken before approaching a court?
Well, the first thing I would say is they should keep their wits around them. They should be a little calm and try and understand that, look, if I want to go to court, I need the evidence, right, to prove anything, to prove or disprove. So I would say the first thing is collect your mind, get your wits together. Thereafter, think the whole thing very carefully and start looking for a lawyer who you feel will be the right match. Collect all your evidence, collect all your documents that you feel may be of use. There are times some useless, meaningless document can also turn the tables. So you should try and get whatever information you can possibly gather and keep it ready. Let the lawyer decide. And then once you reach the lawyer, don't hold yourself in telling the lawyer the correct facts. Even if you have made a mistake, let the lawyer know you made a mistake, because then he or she will know how to defend you. But one thing that you have to understand is, please don't go rushing to the net, take out the information, and then feel like you already know everything. No, sir, you do not know everything. You still need a professional who can help you.
One biggest challenge for these people is to understand when a dispute arises where to go, because they might not know the difference of subject matter jurisdiction or different tribunals for different kinds of matter, or what is actually a territorial jurisdiction. So, ma'am, how can these people determine which court has a jurisdiction?
Well, like I said, you need to catch hold of a good lawyer. That lawyer will tell you whether which court has the pecuniary jurisdiction, territorial jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction. Everything will depend on how the professional guides you. Please don't go jumping into conclusions and deciding, नहीं नहीं मुझे तो Supreme Court में ही case लड़ना है. It doesn't work like that. There is a system that has to be followed, and there are rules and laws that have to be followed. So I would advise that please do not go rushing, and even don't go rushing to tell the lawyers that no, मेरे को तो Supreme Court ही जाना है. There is a way and a pattern that has to be followed, and learn to live
Okay.
with that.
So now, if we have the step one and step two sorted, now, ma'am, for let's say if it's for educational purposes, but many people find court procedures intimidating, like even a lot of lawyers and interns. So, ma'am, to give a brief to these people, could you explain in simple terms the journey of a case from filing to the final judgment?
Yes, I think that's a relevant question because the Indian litigation system takes years before a matter is finally concluded. So people should know that you come to a lawyer today doesn't mean that your case will be decided in 6 months. No, it doesn't. To begin with, a case begins when you file a plaint or a petition or a complaint. That is your original case. Then notice is issued, and if it's a criminal matter, then summons are issued. Then the other side comes in, enters appearance, and then they take time to file their reply and their pleadings. After that, there is something called framing of issues, which is where the judge decides what are the issues that this case has. That is, what is the talking point, or what is it that I have to decide. So those issues are framed. Now, once the issues are framed, that is when trial begins. After that, you have recording of evidence. That is, you as the plaintiff will have your evidence, and the other side as the defendants will also have their evidence. That is a list of people who will give the evidence. Then in evidence also, you have to remember that there is oral evidence which is given by people, but there is also documentary evidence which is placed on a higher footing. So documents will be exhibited, and then comes the final stage where matters will be argued. And when they are argued, after that, the judge passes the final order. Once the order is passed in any particular court, even after that, the matter does not end because you have the right to appeal.
So, ma'am, in your experience, what are some common mistakes made by litigants that end up weakening their case or unnecessarily prolonging legal proceedings?
Well, the first one is the time, because when you feel that you have a case, you must remember there is something called the law of limitation. You cannot file your case as and when you want to. You have to follow the law of limitation. In civil matters, generally it's 3 years. So within 3 years, you have to take legal action. Then second thing is you should never conceal anything from your lawyers. Tell them truthfully, like I said earlier. Even if you made a mistake, tell them. Another mistake that many people make is that they don't keep a record of things. You have fought with somebody, or there is a commercial contract between you and another party, and you people realize that everything is now falling apart. So you would obviously have communicated with each other. So keep that communication live. I mean, if it's a WhatsApp, keep the record live. If it's an email, keep the records live. If it's a telephone conversation, even that you can keep recorded and alive, because these are very important things that you need. So record keeping of everything is extremely important. Apart from that, don't go rushing to unqualified people and taking advice from A, B, and C, because then you have very unrealistic expectations. You don't understand the system. Always trust the professional. You can't go for a surgery and tell the doctor that, look, I'll tell you how to do the surgery. It can't be like that.
So, ma'am, my next question is based on this, that there is a widespread belief that legal cases in India takes years or even decades to conclude, which I admit, even that's not a debate, that's not so open for debate. But how should these people who are looking for justice, how should they realistically approach the legal process, and what expectations should they have regarding the timelines and outcome? Because, ma'am, as we said that these litigants should totally be honest with their advocates. So as advocates, ma'am, if we are also telling them the realistic approach, so ma'am, if you could go about that.
I think this is extremely important. People who are watching this episode will understand that what you have said is the stark reality. Litigation in India takes forever. When I say forever, it's because even when you have managed to be a winner in one court, the process of appeal continues. And Sarthak, we know because we have a blog and we are reporting around 30 to 35 cases every month. We know that most of the cases, when they finish at the Supreme Court, it takes nearly 30 years. So there is no shortcuts. Now, the best advice that I can give people is that, okay, you come to a lawyer, you want a solution, and the lawyer tells you the solution is not going to happen overnight. So, how do you begin? My strategy has always been send a very strong legal notice so that the other side sits up and says, now we are in trouble. And at the end of the
Right.
notice, we all, like you know, Sarthak, we always put a clause where we say that if you want to settle the matter amicably, we can convince our client to do that. And Sarthak, that reminds me, please put it in today's notice also. Apart from that, you will also have to understand that if the other side is not ready for an amicable settlement, then put your best foot forward and push the litigant on the other side into a corner so that he's so desperate that he would want to settle. And this has happened many times in my
Right.
career.
One technical question, ma'am. This is specifically for a lot of young lawyers. Ma'am, many people assume that evidence in a case is always recorded by the judge sitting in the courtroom. However, courts today often appoint commissioners for this purpose. So, ma'am, could you explain whether a commissioner can record these evidences and what are the circumstances related to that?
Well, in such a case, I mean, if both parties are ready, the judge would be more than happy if the entire evidence is recorded by a commissioner. It happens overseas. And I think if it happens in India, things will happen faster. You know, cases which might take, say, 10 years to conclude would then probably take you 7 years. So, in terms of time management, it's a great tool, but both sides have to be agreeable. And the only thing is, you have to ensure that you get an unbiased commissioner who records things correctly, because the idea of getting evidence recorded by a commissioner is to expedite the trial, not to delay it.
Ma'am, it's a saying that precaution is always better than cure. So, ma'am, I would also want to ask you, like, a large number of disputes arise not because people intentionally break the law, but they become unaware of their rights and obligations. So, ma'am, in your view, what are the some basic legal rights and legal precautions that these people should know in their everyday lives?
See, Sarthak, if you're a business person and you want to get into business and a contract has been
Right.
drafted for you, look at the contract and have some questions in your mind. What happens if it fails? What happens if somebody steals my idea? What happens if ultimately I'm unable to run the business? If you get the answer to all your questions, that means your agreement has been drafted properly. Apart from that, you should always, when you're in business, you should always keep your records straight, because you never know when things might come in play. And suppose you are a company, you should always ensure that you get the right kind of legal representation. Don't go to a lawyer just because their fees are lower. That's the worst kind of thing you can do to yourself, because the entire system is a tiered. Go first to the district court, then to the high court, then to the Supreme Court. So if you're going to penny pinch in the beginning and your case gets spoiled in the beginning, believe me, you can't do anything later on. So it's
Ma'am,
best
their
to get
fees is high, but that's gonna cost us more. They don't understand.
is even more. That's why they say cheap is expensive, because if you go for cheap, things become so
Exactly.
expensive, you have to double the cost. So that's one thing. Apart from that, I would also advise everybody that please, whenever you're signing any documents, read the document carefully. If you don't understand, ask. There's no shame in asking. There is no shame in telling somebody, I do not know. So do that and understand, be aware of your legal rights. Like now we have started this YouTube channel for legal awareness. So see sites like this. It will really help you in the long run.
Ma'am, if you had the opportunity to address every young lawyer in this country and every citizen of this country through one single message, ma'am, what would be that one lesson and one principle that you would want these people and this young generation to remember about law, justice, and this legal profession?
Sarthak, I have always believed honesty is the best policy. In the last 30 years of my work, I have always been honest, and believe me, it's been the best policy. So some things don't change. That's the first thing that I would like to say. Second is, I would like to say that apart from that, You should always be open to learning. It doesn't matter which profession you are. You can be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, but just be open to learning. If you keep your mind closed, you will never be able to think out of the box. And also remember that in life, there are no easy things. Everything takes time. You have to have the patience, the perseverance, and sooner or later, you will get your dues.
I would thank you, ma'am, from all our viewers for giving such a huge insight into the profession and even with the legal teaching that you did, ma'am, because as a lawyer, we always love to spread knowledge. We love to help people. We always guide people. And that's really embedded in the way that we talk, ma'am, don't you think? So with that, we would end this video and I would thank Sushila, ma'am, for her time, for giving us such an insight and even our viewers for staying tuned.
Thank you, Sarthak, and goodbye, viewers.